Have you ever sat in a meeting or maybe at a dinner party and someone pitches an idea that you just instantly, like, viscerally hate?
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. You know that exact feeling. Your arms are crossed, your jaw is tight, and you are just waiting and just begging for them to take a breath so you can dismantle their entire argument.
Just ready to absolutely pounce on them.
Exactly. But then they keep talking, and something really strange starts to happen.
Your defenses sort of drop.
Yeah. By the time they actually finish speaking, you're nodding along. You actually find yourself completely agreeing with them.
Yeah.
And you just sit there wondering, like, how on earth did they just do that? It feels almost like magic.
It really does. And, we interpret it as magic because the mechanics are invisible to us in that exact moment.
Right.
When you strip that interaction down to its studs, you aren't looking at some kind of spell being cast. You're looking at conversational architecture.
Conversational architecture. I love that term.
Yeah, because the person talking to you didn't just stumble into changing your mind. They used highly specific linguistic tools to manage your psychology, bypass your defensive reflexes, and literally build a track for your brain to flail.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly the mission of today's deep dive. We are taking a stack of insights from some seriously advanced linguistics research, and our goal is to decode that exact architecture.
Wait, we're getting into the real nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. We aren't just looking at vocabulary lists here. We are looking at how truly exceptional speakers use English to shape outcomes and navigate, well, the messiest parts of human interaction.
The absolute messiest.
Specifically, we are going to explore persuasion, like when someone really does not want to be persuaded, and how to manage people when you are dealing with total systemic ambiguity. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to have a structural toolkit to navigate your own high-stakes conversations.
And that's vital, because the gap between being just a fluent speaker and being a master communicator is entirely about psychological management.
Right. It's not just about knowing the big words.
Exactly. It's the ability to structure a conversation so the other person naturally arrives at the conclusion you want without them ever feeling a push.
Without feeling a push. That's the dream, right? So let's start with that first challenge, persuasion. If you want to change someone's mind without sounding pushy or, aggressive or inviting a fight, the source material points us toward this sort of invisible persuasion toolkit.
Yeah. And it highlights 3 very specific words that act as the foundation for this kind of influence.
Right. Let's hit the first one. It's the adjective compelling.
We really need to analyze why compelling does so much more heavy lifting than just calling an argument interesting or saying a proposal is good.
Because good is so passive, isn't it?
It is. When you categorize an argument or a piece of evidence as compelling, you are explicitly stating that it evokes interest, attention, or admiration in an irresistibly powerful way.
Irresistible, that's the key.
Yes. It fundamentally relies on airtight logic or a very, very strong emotional pull.
You hear it constantly in legal dramas, right? A lawyer stands up in the courtroom and says, "Your Honor, we have compelling evidence." They never, ever say they have good evidence.
No, they get laughed out of the room. In a legal context, compelling evidence is evidence so overwhelmingly strong that it essentially forces a specific conclusion.
It corners you.
Exactly. It leaves the jury with no room for reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So when you transport that gravity into an everyday, high-level professional conversation, saying something like, "She made a compelling case for restructuring the department," you were signaling to the room that her argument wasn't just a nice thought.
Right. It wasn't just a fun brainstorm.
Right. It was so strategically sound that it essentially demands agreement. It has a gravitational pull.
That distinction is so crucial for you to understand as a listener. A good idea is something I can take or leave. A compelling idea pulls me in whether I want to go or not.
It does the work for you.
But you can't just force a compelling argument onto someone out of nowhere, right? Which I think brings us to the second word in this toolkit. It's an action verb this time, elicit.
Yeah, elicit. If we look at the broader mechanics of persuasion, eliciting is arguably the most vital action you can possibly take.
Really? The most vital?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
To elicit means to gently evoke or draw out a response, an answer, or a fact from someone else.
The source material draws a really sharp contrast here between an intermediate speaker and an advanced communicator.
Yeah, let's look at that.
So an intermediate speaker might say, I asked him for his opinion, but a master communicator says, I tried to elicit his feedback. On paper, they look like they mean the exact same thing.
But the psychological approach is completely different.
Right.
Because asking is purely transactional. It can often feel abrupt or even demanding, depending on the tone you use.
Like, tell me what you think right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But eliciting implies a really high degree of emotional intelligence and environmental control. It is the exact opposite of forcing information out of someone.
It's way more subtle.
Think about the mechanics of a top-tier investigative journalist or, say, a highly skilled therapist.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
They rarely bombard their subjects with direct, pointed questions. Instead, they create a conversational environment where the person naturally wants to share.
They sort of set the stage.
Yes, they elicit the hidden stories. They gently guide the subject to reveal things they might otherwise keep completely guarded.
It feels a bit like the difference between chasing a stray dog with a net versus just sitting quietly with a piece of food until the dog comes to you on its own.
That is a perfect analogy.
You are creating the conditions for them to step forward willingly, which honestly sets up the third and final word of this persuasion trio perfectly. The adjective tactful.
Tact is essentially a diplomat's superpower.
A superpower.
Truly. It is the possession of adroitness and profound sensitivity when you are dealing with others, especially, and this is key, when navigating difficult, sensitive, or highly controversial issues.
The source gives a brilliant, very everyday example of this. It describes being tactful as the ability to tell someone they have spinach in their teeth without making them feel embarrassed.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
Right. It's not just about being polite. It's about preserving the other person's dignity while delivering an uncomfortable truth.
And if you scale that dynamic up to a corporate environment, tact is the ability to point out a massive, disastrous flaw in your boss's business plan without making your boss look stupid in front of the entire executive team.
Oh man, in a lot of workplaces, that is a literal survival skill.
It really is. If you bluntly state, this plan is going to fail, you instantly trigger a defensive reaction. You bruise their ego.
And once the ego is bruised, the conversation is basically over.
Exactly. A tactful communicator navigates the objective truth while simultaneously managing the other person's pride.
Okay, so we have this foundation. Compelling, illicit, and tactful. Defining them is one thing, but we really need to see how this architecture functions in the wild.
We need to see the application.
Yeah. The source provides a fascinating case study on managing upward that puts all of this into perspective. So let's break down the mechanics of this scenario.
Let's do it.
So we have a mid-level manager named Alex, and Alex has a very clear objective here. He wants to propose a permanent hybrid work model for his department.
A very common goal these days.
Very common. But standing in his way is his boss, Mr. Henderson, the CEO. And Mr. Henderson is incredibly traditional. His core operating philosophy is, quote, if I can't physically see my employees sitting at their desks, they are not working.
So we have an immediate, deeply ingrained ideological clash.
A huge clash. What happens to the psychology of the room if Alex simply walks in and directly asks for what he wants?
Well, it would be an absolute disaster.
Right. If Alex walks in and says, hey, the team wants to work from home 2 days a week, he just hits a big wall.
A direct assault on a deeply held belief almost always triggers what psychologists call an amygdala hijack.
An amygdala hijack.
A massive defensive wall just slams down in their brain. If Alex goes in and argues, remote work is the future, we need to adapt, the CEO doesn't hear a business proposal.
What does he hear?
The CEO hears, your entire worldview is obsolete and you are fundamentally wrong.
Ouch. Yeah.
The logical part of the conversation terminates before it even begins.
But Alex seems to understand this intuitively, so he uses the toolkit instead. He walks into the CEO's office and he completely avoids the words work from home.
He doesn't even bring it up.
No. Instead, he anchors the beginning of the conversation squarely on the CEO's territory. He says, Mr. Henderson, as we look at our Q3 targets, I wanted to elicit your thoughts on our current operational bottlenecks. What's your biggest worry regarding team output right now?
Notice the strategic restraint there.
It's brilliant.
He anchors on Q3 targets and operational bottlenecks. He is speaking the CEO's native language.
This feels a bit like a conversational Trojan horse to me.
Trojan horse?
Oh,
How so?
Well, Alex is hiding his actual pitch inside a question about the CEO's own stress. He wheels this giant wooden gift into the office, like, hey, tell me about your worries, I care about your stress, But hidden inside the belly of that question is the exact groundwork Alex needs for his hybrid work proposal.
That is exactly what's happening. By utilizing an eliciting strategy, Alex prompts the CEO to willingly open the gates.
He didn't have to force his way in.
Not at all. Alex isn't demanding anything. He is asking a question specifically designed to elicit the CEO's underlying anxieties. And the strategy works beautifully.
Mr. Henderson just starts pouring his heart out, right?
He freely admits to a whole host of problems. He vents about employee burnout, high turnover rates, and a really noticeable drop in midday productivity on the office floor.
Which is so funny because people genuinely love to talk about their problems if they feel they have a captive, empathetic audience.
We all do.
By eliciting these specific pain points, Alex basically gathers all the intelligence he requires. He can now position his hybrid work idea not as a lazy perk for the staff, but as a customized solution to the CEO's own stated grievances.
But gathering the intelligence is only the first phase.
Right, he still has to actually make the pitch.
Exactly. Alex still has to pitch it, and he has to do it without triggering that defensive reflex we discussed earlier. He has to construct a compelling case based on the problems he just elicited.
So how does he do that?
To execute this, he employs a highly advanced linguistic mechanism known as hedging.
Hedging. The source specifically refers to this as C2 level hedging. And for listeners who might not be familiar with that terminology, C2 refers to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, right?
That's right.
It's the absolute highest tier of fluency, where you aren't just communicating facts, but mastering the subtle psychological layers of the language.
That's correct. It is absolute mastery. Hedging, at this level, is the strategic use of softening words and phrases to make an argument less dogmatic, less absolute, and therefore significantly more palatable to the listener.
Let's compare a blunt approach to Alex's hedged approach, just to see the contrast. A less sophisticated communicator might take the problems the CEO just listed and say, working from home increases productivity and stops burnout. We need to implement it.
Right. And that phrasing is a rigid wall.
It's very demanding.
It leaves absolutely no room for discussion, which instinctively invites the other person to try and knock the wall down.
Oh, you think we need to do this? Watch me say no.
Exactly. Now analyze Alex's C2 level approach. Alex says, it could be argued that a rigid office schedule is partially contributing to the burnout you mentioned. Evidence seems to suggest that allowing 2 days of deep, uninterrupted work might actually mitigate that midday slump.
Okay, let's isolate the specific softening mechanisms there because there are a few of them.
Let's break them down.
He uses, it could be argued, partially contributing, seems to suggest, and might actually mitigate. I want to push back on this strategy for a second, though.
Sure, go ahead.
If I am sitting across from the CEO of my company pitching a major operational change, doesn't hedging make me sound hesitant? Like, doesn't a CEO want a leader who speaks with absolute unwavering confidence?
It's a very natural assumption to make. We're taught to be assertive in business.
Right. Speak with authority.
But the psychology functioning beneath the surface of this specific interaction dictates otherwise. What's fascinating here is that hedging in a hierarchical dynamic is not about displaying a lack of confidence.
What is it about them?
It is entirely about preserving the CDO's ego and conversational status.
Walk me through that. How does saying a solution might actually protect the boss's ego?
Consider the power dynamic in the room. Mr. Henderson holds the authority. He's the CEO.
Right.
If Alex presents his solution with absolute, unyielding certainty, this is the undeniable fact, this is the only solution, he verbally backs the CEO into a corner.
Because he's basically telling the CEO what to do.
Exactly. The CEO is left with two bad choices. Submit to his subordinate's authority, which hurts his pride, or fight back to maintain his own dominance.
And he'll almost always choose to fight back.
Always. By introducing phrases like "it could be argued" or "evidence seems to suggest," Alex intentionally lowers his own conversational status just enough to allow the CEO to remain in the seat of power.
Oh, wow. That's really subtle.
Alex isn't dictating reality. He is floating an interesting hypothesis in the air and essentially asking, what do you, the ultimate decision maker, make of this?
He removes all the friction.
All of it.
It's basically conversational judo. He is using the CEO's own momentum, the problems the CEO just complained about, to carry the pitch forward.
Alex builds a track for the CEO's mind to follow.
Yeah.
The proposal is framed as a direct remedy to the CEO's elicited problems. And because it is presented with soft and non-threatening language, it transforms into an incredibly compelling argument.
The CEO feels consulted, not attacked. He feels like he is evaluating a delicate business hypothesis rather than being ordered to change his company's policies.
So if you want to manage upward and persuade someone who holds power over you, the worst thing you can possibly do is start with your solution.
It's a guaranteed way to fail.
You have to start by eliciting their pain points, and then you use tactful, hedged language to build a path that leads them organically to your idea. You essentially orchestrate it so that they feel like it was their discovery all along.
It is a profound shift in how we approach disagreement.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Persuasion is a powerful tool when you have a clear, defined goal, right? Alex knew he wanted a hybrid work model.
He had a destination in mind.
Exactly. But what happens when you have absolutely no answers? What happens when an organization is thrown into total chaos, you don't know what the future holds, and yet an entire team of people is staring at you, expecting you to lead them? Now we shift gears. We move from a challenge of managing upward with a specific objective to the much more complex challenge of managing downward in a state of total ambiguity.
It's terrifying.
We're entering the gray zone.
The gray zone. To survive the gray zone, the source material provides a completely different set of concepts. It gives us the ambiguity toolkit.
And the first word in this set is, appropriately enough, ambiguous.
Let's define it.
To be ambiguous means to be open to more than one interpretation. It means a situation has a double meaning or is fundamentally inexact because critical choices simply haven't been made yet.
The facts of the reality are unsettled.
Precise.
In the corporate world, I've noticed that ambiguous often acts as the ultimate polite corporate shield.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the most professional, sophisticated way of admitting I have absolutely no idea what is going on right now.
It really is.
Like, if a stakeholder asks about a delayed project and you reply, well, the board's current directive is somewhat ambiguous, you maintain your professionalism while accurately diagnosing a total lack of clarity above you.
It describes the chaos without internalizing the blame for it.
Right. It's not my fault. It's ambiguous.
Which brings us to the next critical concept when navigating the gray zone. Paradigm.
Paradigm. First of all, the spelling of this word versus the pronunciation is just a nightmare. P-A-R-A-D-I-G-M. Paradigm.
English is a very strange language.
It truly is. But structurally, a paradigm is essentially the lens through which we view reality, right? It's an underlying framework or a deeply accepted model of how a system operates.
You most often encounter it in the phrase paradigm shift, which denotes a fundamental structural change in those underlying assumptions.
For example, if a legacy company has spent 50 years manufacturing and selling physical DVDs, and suddenly leadership decides to pivot into becoming a cloud-based streaming subscription service.
That isn't just a new product launch.
No, that is a complete paradigm shift. Every single department, marketing, legal, engineering, has to completely shatter their old framework and adopt a brand new view of the industry.
And to survive a paradigm shift of that magnitude, especially when the details are highly ambiguous, an organization requires the third concept in our toolkit.
Which is resilient.
Yes, resilience is psychological elasticity. It is the capacity for an individual, a team, or an entire organization to withstand incredibly difficult, high-pressure conditions and eventually bounce back to their original shape or adapt into a stronger one.
Okay, so we have our concepts: ambiguous, paradigm, and resilient. Let's look at the second case study from the source to see how these are deployed to actually manage panic.
This is a great scenario.
We are introduced to Maya. Maya is a mid-level director, and she's responsible for leading a department of about 30 employees.
Decent-sized team.
Yeah, and her company has just publicly announced a massive, incredibly messy corporate merger with their largest rival.
A classic nightmare scenario for middle management.
It is the absolute definition of an ambiguous environment. Nobody has any concrete facts. Nobody knows if their specific department is redundant. Nobody knows who the new executive team will be.
Total chaos.
And Maya's 30 employees are terrified. They are looking to her for answers that she simply does not possess.
This specific environment creates a behavioral trap that catches countless leaders. In the broader scope of crisis communication, when faced with this level of systemic ambiguity, lower-level communicators almost invariably fall into one of two dangerous extremes.
Let's explore those extremes. The first is false hope.
Right. Toxic positivity.
The worst.
The manager stands at the front of the room and says, "Don't worry, everyone. I'm sure everything's going to be fine. Your jobs are safe. We just need to keep working hard."
Even though they don't actually know that.
Exactly. They offer reassurances they have no factual basis to provide.
And what happens?
Well, The moment the first round of layoffs occurs, that manager's credibility is permanently obliterated. The team will never, ever trust a word they say again.
The manager traded their long-term authority for a few hours of short-term comfort.
Precisely. And the second extreme is the exact opposite.
Joining the doom spiral?
The manager says, I know this merger is a disaster. I'm just as scared as you are. I have no idea what leadership is doing.
Which, might feel authentic and empathetic in the moment.
It does feel authentic,
Yeah.
but it completely destroys the manager's authority. The team is looking for a captain to steer the ship, and the captain just announced that the steering wheel is broken and they were all going to sink.
It induces absolute panic.
Total panic.
So Maya has to find a way to thread this needle. She has to use language to manufacture a sense of stability in an environment that is objectively unstable.
Let's look at how she executes this linguistic stability.
She calls a team meeting, and she starts by doing something very counterintuitive. She validates the monster in the room, and then she strategically distances herself from it.
Let's analyze her exact opening syntax.
So, Maya stands at the front of the room and says, I know the timeline for this merger is highly ambiguous right now. Upper management is still finalizing the structural details.
The linguistic strategy here is multi-layered and incredibly precise.
Break it down for us.
First, she utilizes the word ambiguous to validate reality. She refuses to gaslight her team. She openly acknowledges the lack of clarity, which instantly earns her credibility.
Right, she's not pretending everything is fine.
But the true brilliance lies in the phrasing of her second sentence. Upper management is still finalizing the structural details.
Oh, she specifically avoids saying we are finalizing the details. She delegates all the chaos to upper management.
She builds a linguistic firewall between herself and the executive suite.
A firewall.
She is implicitly telling her team, the ambiguity you're feeling is being generated up there. It is not being generated down here with us.
That's so smart.
By establishing this boundary, she preserves her own authority. She positions herself not as a helpless middleman, but as a shield, protecting her team from the confusion above.
Okay, but once she establishes that firewall, she has to pivot her team, right? She can't let them just wallow in the ambiguity all day.
She has to pivot them from victimhood.
So she continues her speech, saying, rather than speculating on the unknown, we need to fundamentally shift our paradigm regarding how we view this transition.
She demands a paradigm shift. She is diagnosing their current mindset, sitting around waiting in terror for upper management to dictate their fate as a broken framework.
It's a useless framework.
Exactly. They need a new model for processing the merger. And to deliver that new model, she deploys one of the most powerful syntactical architectures in the English language.
This is the climax of Maya's linguistic strategy. It's called a cleft sentence.
Maya looks at her team and says, what we need to focus on is building a more resilient operational model.
Okay, before we break down the grammar of a cleft sentence, let me offer an analogy for how this actually feels to a listener.
Please do.
Imagine you are trapped in a massive, pitch-black warehouse. People are panicking, they're bumping into machinery, frantically looking for an exit. A standard sentence saying something like, we need to focus on resilience, is the equivalent of flipping on a very dim, flickering overhead bulb.
It gives you a little light, but not much.
Right. It provides a tiny bit of context, but the room is still mostly dark and confusing. A cleft sentence operates completely differently. It is the equivalent of turning on a massive, high-powered theatrical spotlight and pointing it directly at a single, brightly painted door.
Wow.
It forces everyone in the room to look at one exact spot.
That visualization captures the cognitive effect perfectly. Let's look at the actual mechanics of why a cleft sentence acts as a spotlight.
How does it work?
The term cleft means to divide or split. We're taking a simple standard idea, we need to focus on resilience, and we literally cleave it into two distinct clauses to manipulate the listener's attention.
You start by heavily loading the front of the sentence, what we need to focus on.
By starting with a what clause, you immediately build psychological tension. The listener's brain recognizes that an instruction is coming, but the critical information is being withheld.
What we need to focus on.
Yeah.
It forces the listener to lean in.
Exactly. Then you introduce the fulcrum of the sentence. The verb is.
What we need to focus on, is.
The verb is holds all of that built-up tension for a split second, acting as a hinge. And then comes the resolution clause, building a resilient operational model.
Ooh.
All of the tension is released onto that single concept. It makes the final idea land with incredible, undeniable authority. It carves the concept of resilience right into the listener's mind.
The old paradigm is collapsing around Maya's team. The merger is happening, and the ambiguity is a factual reality. But Maya uses this cleft sentence, this syntactical spotlight, to provide her team with a single bright focal point that they can actually control.
They have zero control over the merger.
None. They can't control who gets laid off in the executive suite, but they can control their daily workflow. They can control becoming a resilient department.
It is a masterclass in outcome management.
It really is.
If you evaluate the situation at the end of that meeting, the team still lacks any concrete answers about the merger. They still do not know who their boss will be in 30 days. The ambiguity remains.
But their panic has been neutralized.
Completely. Maya utilized specific vocabulary and syntactical tension to manufacture psychological safety. She provided an emotional anchor in the middle of a corporate hurricane.
Let's pull back and look at the journey we've taken through this source material today. We explored two vastly different yet equally perilous conversational environments.
We really ran the gamut.
We looked at the mechanics of managing upward with Alex. He avoided the trap of a direct assault on his CEO's beliefs. Instead, he used an eliciting strategy to uncover the CEO's operational fears, and then deployed tactful, hedged language phrases like, "it could be argued," and "seems to suggest," to build a compelling case that felt like a collaborative discovery rather than a subordinate's demand.
And then we shifted our focus to managing downward in a state of chaos with Maya. We examined how she steered a terrified department through a highly ambiguous corporate merger. She avoided the dual traps of toxic positivity and shared panic by validating the reality of the unknown.
Firewall.
Yes. She linguistically distanced herself from the executive chaos, demanded a paradigm shift from her team, and utilized the intense cognitive spotlight of a cleft sentence to drive their focus exclusively toward resilience.
So if we synthesize all of this, what is the ultimate takeaway? Like, what is the so what of this deep dive?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the realization is that advanced communication, true mastery of language, is never merely about data transfer.
It's not just swapping facts.
It is not simply the act of passing factual information from my brain into yours. It is fundamentally about psychological management.
Wow.
The specific vocabulary you select, the way you intentionally soften a phrase with hedging to protect an ego, the way you build cognitive tension with a cleft sentence to direct focus. These structural choices dictate how the people around you feel, how they process their environment, and ultimately how they behave.
It is the hidden machinery of human interaction.
It truly is.
And that brings me to a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over as you go about the rest of your week. We have spent this entire deep dive examining how you can actively use these conversational architectures on other people.
We've looked at how you can construct tracks to persuade your leadership or anchor your team.
But I want you to consider the inverse scenario. Think back to a recent time you found yourself suddenly abandoning your own argument to agree with a colleague. Or recall a moment where you felt strangely, deeply reassured by a manager during a chaotic period at your company.
This prompts a somewhat unsettling question. Were you naturally arriving at those conclusions through your own independent reasoning?
Or were you simply walking down a carefully constructed linguistic track that someone else laid down for you? I want you to start paying close attention to the architecture of your daily conversations. Listen closely for the soft C2 level hedging used in the next negotiation you attend.
Watch for the sudden, blinding spotlight of a cleft sentence used against you when a manager wants to redirect your focus.
You might just realize exactly when your own psychology is being expertly managed. Think back to that dinner party scenario we discussed at the very beginning. That person who somehow managed to change your mind while you were actively trying to hate their pitch.
They weren't casting a magic spell.
No, they were operating the mechanics of language. And now you know exactly how the machinery works. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep analyzing the conversations happening around you. Keep exploring these concepts, and we will catch you next time.